Number 9, and this is the bonus point. I think I say bonus really weird. Hi, I'm Vera and welcome to my channel where I talk everything disability related. Today's video is about 8 things I wish you knew about people who use wheelchairs. Let's get into it. Number 1. Not everyone who uses a wheelchair is paralyzed. Ambulant wheelchair users, which means people that can walk but need to use a wheelchair because of pain or fatigue or fainting or any other condition, exist. Which means that if you see someone using a wheelchair and they get up later, it doesn't mean that they are faking it. It doesn't mean that they don't need to use the wheelchair. It just means that the wheelchair enabled them to conserve their energy or conserve their pain levels enough to get up right now. Number 2, people who use wheelchairs can think and speak for themselves. This is especially apparent when I am outside with my partner and I am asking someone something and they listen to me and then deliberately point their body away from me to talk with my partner and exclude me from the conversation. This is rude. People who use wheelchairs deserve to have the basic respect of being part of the conversation, especially if it's a conversation that we initiated or that we are a part of, or that is about us. Like, we deserve to have this basic respect of being able to have these conversations and being able to advocate for ourselves. Number 3, I am not sad because I use a wheelchair. I am not sad because I am disabled. Disabilities aren't sad, they just are. They are neutral. And in that vein, I am not bound to my wheelchair. My wheelchair is not my prison. My wheelchair is not my chain. My wheelchair gave me freedom. The freedom to go out and meet with friends and go to university and work and whatever. And all of these things I couldn't do if it wasn't for my wheelchair. So the correct terminology is not wheelchair bound. The preferred terminology is wheelchair user or someone who uses a wheelchair. And now, I know you wonder, why is this important? But it is important because language shapes our reality. Our thoughts shape our reality. So if you think of someone as wheelchair bound, you think only about their limitations and you might even start to feel sorry for them. But like I said, we are not sad, first of all, and our wheelchair gives us agency, and this is so important, and this is why we are wheelchair users and not wheelchair bound. Number 4. Now imagine this, how would you feel if I, a random person, just came up to you and picked you up and put you somewhere else? I'm sure that doesn't feel very great, does it? Well, it doesn't when I'm in my wheelchair either. So please, don't just move my wheelchair out of the way. Ask. Respect us as autonomous beings. And in a similar vein, don't hand over me because I'm shorter than you. Respect my personal space, even though I am in a wheelchair. Number 5. People who use wheelchairs are not helpless. We spend a lot of time and energy thinking about how we can do things, and we are very, very successful at it. So presume that we are capable, because we are. And on a similar note, don't just help us. If it's not asked for, it isn't helping, it's interfering. Having said that, if you are in a situation where you think that someone in a wheelchair does need your help, just ask. Ask if you can help us. If the answer is no, that's great, thank you for asking, please move along. If the answer is yes, and I tell you, yes, can you please do this thing for me? Please do that thing for me. For example, I am very often in a situation where I have to use an elevator, for example, and the elevator is kind of small. So I know that I have to get into the elevator in a very specific way, which means that sometimes I need to have other people go into the elevator first. Now, I have discussions with people very often where they insist that because I am in a wheelchair, I have to go inside the elevator first, even though I tell them that no, they have to go in first because I don't fit otherwise. This is one of the situations where you can help, but please just do what I ask you, because that is helping and anything else is not helping. So to summarize this point, people who use wheelchairs are very capable, and please also presume that we are. Number 6, and this is a very practical point. When I'm in my wheelchair, I'm actually quite a bit shorter than the average person, which is fine. But it just means that when I am waiting to cross a road and you go stand next to me, I can't see anything. And in fact, I often struggle with seeing anything because of the cars in the first place. So I have to stand at a very specific point. Now, please don't stand in between someone who uses a wheelchair and their line of vision for the traffic. You know, it's dangerous and we can't cross until we can see what we're crossing. So instead, if you are at a crossroads with someone who uses a wheelchair, stand a little bit behind them. You can still see over us and you can still see all of the traffic that is coming, and we can also see. Number 7, another traffic related one. The pedestrian path always slopes a little bit. This is to allow rainwater to fall off the pedestrian path easier and quicker and go into the gutter. This is fine, but this point of this slope kind of accelerates at the end of the pedestrian path. This makes it a little bit difficult, a little bit tricky for me to use my wheelchair there. Also because sometimes it's kind of difficult to tell when I'm in the wheelchair where the path ends and where my wheel begins. If I don't steer well and I fall over the pedestrian path, like I have a problem. So this is why I ask you, if you have to cross someone in a wheelchair, if it's possible, please make sure that you take the far edge of the pedestrian path. Unless the pedestrian path is really holy or has a lot of lumps or whatever, because then it's actually, better that I stay at the relatively flat part. And this also ties into the fact that presume that wheelchair users are capable and we have a reason for doing almost everything that we do. To be honest with you, the streets are rarely flat. Sometimes the stones aren't put in properly, so the stones are like this. Sometimes there are roots. So often, a lot of the times when I'm in my wheelchair and I'm rolling myself somewhere, there's only one way I can take. And sometimes that means that I have to walk on the left side of the road rather than the right side. If this happens, please presume that I have a reason why I'm rolling on the wrong side of the road. It often has to do with that. So please just walk around me, even though I am aware that I am annoying you. Number 8. And I know that this point isn't really relevant for a lot of you, but if you are an architect or an interior design, please pay attention, because the point is the accessible toilets should not be changing rooms. Now, I am all in favor of gender neutral changing rooms. I really am. I think it's a super good idea, but please do not put these in accessible toilets because they take up a lot of space. And yes, I am aware that most of the changing stations, they fold into the wall, but also a lot of parents forget to actually do that. And it's not always possible when I'm in my wheelchair to do that because I can't always reach it. And to put it very plainly, I cannot use a toilet that I cannot get into. Also, not everyone in a wheelchair has full control over their bladders, which means that if they have to go, they have to go now. The more people use accessible toilets, the more chance there is for a queue to be outside of an accessible toilet. And this also goes for parents. I fully understand that it's so much easier when you're in the mall with your children and you have to use the toilet. It is so much more easier to put your children in the accessible toilet with you because it's so much bigger. But again, these toilets are not for that. They are for people with disabilities, so or chronic illnesses, so they should be free for them. Now, on the same hand, invisible disabilities or invisible illnesses do exist, and I will never, ever, ever judge anyone who uses an accessible toilet, even though they might not look very disabled or they might not look very ill. It doesn't matter. The only person who can decide whether or not they need to use an accessible toilet is that person themselves. And they know. And I also ask you not to judge anyone who uses an accessible toilet. But in return, I also ask of you to please do not use these toilets if you don't need them. And you know if you need them or not. Number 9, and this is the bonus point. If you would like to meet someone or hang out with someone who uses a wheelchair, please make sure that the venue you're choosing is accessible. And that means having an accessible door, so either flat or a ramp. And if there is a ramp, the door cannot be too heavy at the top of the ramp because gravity, we roll backwards. Make sure that the venue is spacious enough for someone to maneuver a wheelchair through. Now, my wheelchair is 38 centimeters without the wheels or my hands when I push them. And my arms have to be pointed outside if I want to push my wheelchair. So you can imagine that I take up quite a bit of space. Make sure that the toilet is flat, it has the push-up bars, it has the cord hanging down, it has a sink that we can roll under so we can wash our hands, paper that we can grab or a towel that we can grab. But most importantly, this toilet cannot be behind a stairs or a step. Now I know that this sounds very obvious, but I've been in numerous situations where I couldn't use the accessible toilet because they were behind a stairs or a step. Now, of course, we can make sure that the venue we're going at is accessible, and we do. But I know for myself that it makes me feel so incredibly loved and welcomed and included when you put an effort in this too. So there you have it. 8 things that I wish you knew about people who use wheelchairs. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this. Are there things that you had never thought about? If you use a wheelchair, did I miss some things? I am really very interested in hearing what you think about this. Bye! As I was editing this video, I realized that this entire list can be summed up in one point, which is I need you to respect the agency of people who use wheelchairs and of people who might be otherwise disabled or chronically ill.